first of all, welcome to Kyrgyzstan, Mr. Tilleman, and tell us more about your visit and what is the aim of your visit to our country.
Well, thanks very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. We recognize that Kyrgyzstan is a very important example of both democracy and civil society in the region. In the United States and in my work at the State Department, we are committed to strengthening and supporting civil society around the world. We've seen civil society play a critical role in strengthening democracy throughout our history. It's been responsible for virtually every major social advance that we've experienced as a nation. And we're committed to working with countries in every region, but particularly in Central Asia, to strengthen those civic innovators who are helping to speak out on behalf of human rights, who are helping to promote inclusive development, and who are also working to create a future in which every citizen will be able to realize their potential. So that really is the source of my visit, and we're also very focused on expanding cooperation with the community of democracies and a broader organization of countries and civil society leaders who are committed to strengthening the democratic principles on which Kyrgyzstan is based, and it's growing.
Right now I think the trend which is going on in the country is that I would say that the public image of the US and its foreign policy is probably maybe it's one of the lowest peaks ever in the history. Like, to be honest, I mean it's like this. Do you agree with that, and why do you think such a negative opinion about the US is happening actually in our country and in general in the former Soviet Union?
Well, there are those in the region who are not interested in cooperation with the United States, and we need to recognize that. But there are also a lot of great leaders in government and out of government who are interested in stronger cooperation, who recognize the tremendous potential we have when we can work together. So I think we're clear-eyed and mindful of the fact that there are those who, for a variety of reasons, don't want to work together. But at the same time, as we survey the region, as we survey its extraordinary potential, we see some real opportunities to partner, to continue expanding our cooperation in everything from education to civil society and democracy development to economic development. And it's our hope that we can continue to build a strong relationship on that basis.
Civil society is currently experiencing huge problems, I think, in the country, and especially being labeled right now, even informally, like as foreign agents or even like spies or things like this. Why do you think it's happening, and who is responsible for what is going on in black PR of work of the civil society?
Well, put very simply, in every country and every government, there will be people who don't want greater accountability. They don't want greater transparency. They have figured out ways to benefit from the status quo, and they want to preserve that status quo for their own purposes. And again, it's our view, and I think the view of a lot of very brave leaders in Kyrgyzstan, that it's important for government to be accountable to citizens. It's important for there to be a strong and open national dialogue about the key issues that every country faces as it tries to build a better future. And so it's, I think, vital for us to recognize that, again, there are those who are going to try and smear civil society and compromise the nature of its activity. But ultimately, I don't think there is anything more patriotic than working to build a better country. I don't think there is anything more patriotic than identifying ways that your nation can do better. So again, I really question the motives of those who are attempting to portray civil society in a negative light and recognize the heroism and incredible sacrifices that have already been made by those in civil society on behalf of a stronger Kyrgyzstan.
Now I'd like to go to the questions from our readers, because the first question is actually related to what we've been just talking about. One of the questions which gathered actually quite a lot of likes was how the US in general and Department of State in particular are going to work with the civil society of Kyrgyzstan in the nearest future. Because I just read the news today that US has decreased the military aid to the Kyrgyzstan like many times. like comparing to what it has been before, and actually to other Central Asian countries, what's going on in civil society sector, and well, basically how are you going to cooperate?
Part of why I'm here is because we see an extraordinary opportunity to cooperate with civil society and work with the government of Kyrgyzstan in strengthening democracy. And again, this isn't just the United States. I'm here today because many of our partners within the community of democracies see the potential here, and they're eager to work with the people of this nation and civic organizations in Kyrgyzstan to realize the country's potential. A few weeks ago, I was in Estonia and met with the foreign minister of Estonia. And together we spoke about the opportunity to expand a global network of democracy experts that we built together called the LEND Network, which stands for Leaders Engaged in New Democracies, to Kyrgyzstan, and how we can bring in those in this nation who are positioned to help advance democracy and connect them up with former prime ministers and presidents, Supreme Court justices, members of parliament, and others from around the world who have been through this process before and who have good perspective that may be useful as Kyrgyzstan continues its democratic transition. So that's just one very small example of how we are eager to engage with the people and civic organizations in this country. And again, our ultimate goal is not to tell anybody what to do. Our ultimate goal is simply to give the tools and perspective and information to Kyrgyz partners that they need in order to build the country that they want to build and the future that they want to build. That's why we're here, and that's what we hope to do.
The other question, which was actually asked by several users online, was mentioned was about double standards, where people quite often accuse the U.S. of double standards, especially in foreign policy. And examples that some users were giving were about Kyrgyzstan, actually, because some people in Kyrgyzstan believe that the U.S. Decreased the public support of the civil society when there was more cooperation with President Bakiyev in 2009 and so on. Do you admit that double standards exist in the U.S. foreign policy at all? And if yes, how do you fight with it, or how do you try them not to happen?
It's a very important question and a very fair question. The United States is a country like any other country. And like any other country, we have a responsibility to work to keep our people safe. We don't apologize for that. It's not something that we're ashamed of. It's one of the most important things that we do. At the same time, we are deeply committed to the principles of democracy, and we are deeply committed to working to advance those principles whenever we can as part of our foreign policy. We recognize that from time to time these values will come into conflict. We know that. And we do the best we can to our ability to balance them and to ensure that as we try to keep our people safe and as we try to build a world in which there is greater security and greater prosperity, that we're also true to our values and true to our principles. It's not an easy task for us, it's not an easy task for any nation, but we do the best we can.
And when you say keeping our people safe, have there been situations in Kyrgyzstan when you had to keep? Well, first of all, who are our people?
Speaking globally, of course, the United States faces a lot of security challenges, and many countries in the world face a lot of security challenges. Not in Kyrgyzstan specifically, but certainly within the broader region, we've seen that unfold in a variety of ways. And so the challenge we face again is how to build a world in which citizens in every country have the security and the political space that they need in order to realize their potential. This is tough work. It's not a straightforward task, but again, we try to do the best we can.
But still, keeping our people safe was what you mentioned. You say that sometimes it is in conflict with supporting democracy. Has there been, in your opinion, a case in Kyrgyzstan when there was such a conflict between keeping people safe and supporting democracy?
Well, again, without getting into the deep history of Kyrgyzstan, I think where we are today is pretty clear. The United States sees a tremendous opportunity to support the growth of Kyrgyzstan civil society the United States sees a tremendous opportunity to support those within Kyrgyzstan's government and elsewhere who are interested in building a nation that is accountable, that is open to the world, that is interested in providing its people with opportunities, and that's what we're looking to do going forward.
Thank you. Then the next bunch of questions is of course about Ukraine. Well, I'm not surprised because these events are playing a huge role, I think, in what's going on in Kyrgyzstan at the moment. And so the question which really gathered several likes was, can you tell us right now, like, what was actually the influence of the United States on Euromaidan and what was happening in Ukraine since December 2013?
That's an important question, and I think it's useful to clear up a lot of the misconceptions that exist around this. The United States had nothing to do with Euromaidan. It was not something that we were involved in instigating in any way. Ultimately, this was an action that took root among the Ukrainian people because they were tired of a lot of the corruption that they saw within their society. And they were tired of living in a nation where they felt that they were being lied to and taken advantage of. Again, this is something that the United States was not involved in. We support basic principles. We support the principle of civil society. We support the principle of peaceful assembly and the freedom of association. And beyond that, this was something that took root in Ukrainian society on its own. So again, while we are committed to strengthening and supporting civil society around the world, our support is for principles, not for individual political movements.
And then also quite a lot of people, they ask then, where is this line between, freedom of assembly and the ability to speak out against a certain problem and ousting the president and going violent against security services or the police. How do you think actually in such a situation people who are gathering peacefully should behave when things like at Euromaidan are happening?
Well, in Ukraine and in other settings around the world, the United States is very forthright in its support for nonviolence. The United States has been extremely outspoken in the fact that we believe those on all sides, when civic resistance occurs, need to be peaceful. And we believe that it's in the interest of all sides to be peaceful and to find ways to negotiate their differences. So again, there are responsibilities among all those who participate in a democratic society. Governments need to respect the freedom of association and assembly. These are universal principles, these are universal human rights, and at the same time we believe that those in civil society, by definition, have an obligation to work through peaceful means. And when we speak about civil society, we are referring specifically to those who work through peaceful means to make their nations better.
Another question about Ukraine, which I think worries quite a lot of people. And I will quote it actually directly. The question is like this. What is the difference between Kosovo becoming independent from Serbia and actually not being part of Serbia anymore, according to many countries, and Crimea not being part of Ukraine? In your opinion, what is the difference between these situations when actually global powers reacted totally opposite way to each of these situations?
Well, it's an interesting question from an academic standpoint, and again, we could discuss the fine points of this for a long time. Just to put this in a nutshell, in Kosovo, we had an impending genocide that was being organized by a dictatorial regime against its own people. That was absolutely not the case in Crimea, regardless of whatever lies have been put forward by media organizations in this region or by governments in the region. Similarly, in Kosovo, you had an extended period in which the United Nations was engaged at the highest levels to facilitate negotiations and attempt to broker a solution to the crisis that existed there. And the process of negotiations and the process of engagement by the United Nations extended for years and years and years. We saw nothing analogous in the case of Crimea, and in fact, we saw very active attempts to oppose possible compromises and UN engagement to broker a solution. So again, without delving too far into the details, these cases are extremely far apart for any rational, reasonable observer who's looking at the history with an objective eye.
Okay, then one last question, which is also from the audience, and I think it's going to generalize everything that we've said. Do you think there are any threats to sovereignty or independence of Kyrgyzstan at the moment? And if yes, what are they, and how the US are going to counter them?
Well, again, without delving into any specifics, I think that it's critical to recognize that every nation in every part of the world needs strong institutions. Every nation in every part of the world needs independent institutions. Every nation needs a free and vibrant and open media and a strong civil society. And Kyrgyzstan has made tremendous progress in many of those areas. To the extent there are threats that emerge to those types of institutions, then in the long run that can pose a real challenge. And so it's important to safeguard against those types of dangers. But again, this is a country that has already come a tremendous distance along the journey that is democracy, and we look forward to seeing that journey continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Telemann.
Thank you.
It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you.